Okay, we're live here, so welcome. We are at the January 30th Red Rock Corridor Commissioner agenda. We're going to start off with introductions. We can start over here.
I'm Commissioner Nicole Fretham, representing District 1 of Ramsey County.
Welcome.
I'm Tom Ingeman, representing the City of Newport.
I'm Sandy Dingle, the mayor in St. Paul Park.
Wayne Johnson, County Commissioner for Washington County.
I'm Mark Vaughn with the City of Hastings.
Dave Thiede, City Council of Cottage Grove.
Emily Jorgensen, Washington County staff.
Joyce Johnson, Washington County staff. Kurt Howard, Washington County staff. Matt Wolf, I'm the economic development coordinator for the city of Cottage Grove. Bill Sumner, Newport.
Sheena Denny, Aids and Commissioner for District 1.
Kevin Robbie, Ramsey County Public Works staff.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. And so we're going to start off the agenda right off the bat here with election of officers for 2020. So the first step we do is take nominations for chair. Can I hear nominations?
I'll nominate Wayne Johnson to be the chair.
Second.
Okay, any others? Any others? Do I hear any other nominations? Do I hear any other nominations? Okay. With that nomination, all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? So, okay, well, thank you. I'm happy to be here for another year. So now we have nominations for vice chair.
To nominate Mayor Dingle.
Okay. Do we have, and I don't think we need seconds on nominations from my experience, so.
I don't believe
Do we have any other nominations? Is there any other nominations? Hearing none, can I, all in favor of Mayor Dingle being on for vice chair for 2020? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. Any opposed? No? Okay. Thank you. And, welcome aboard for another year.
Make it.
So, okay, so next item we have is approval of agenda. Has everybody had a chance to look at it?
I'll move the agenda as printed.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Any comments or any requests? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, passes. We have an agenda. Okay, so now we are going to go to the Red Rock Corridor overview, and we have Emily Jorgensen to provide that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commission, since we have two new members joining us today and it's our first meeting of 2020, we always like to do a tiny refresher just on what this commission is about. And for anybody who might be viewing through the telecast, also just to get them up to speed. So this is the Red Rock Corridor Commission. It's a 30-mile transitway between Union Depot and Hastings. It closely follows the Highway 61 corridor. We have an implementation plan that was completed in 2016, and out of that came some near-term and long-term strategies, and all working to get us to the goal of reaching full bus rapid transit implementation. We like to describe bus rapid transit as kind of a light rail on wheels, with the fact that it's a really nice bus that comes at high frequencies, it's bi-directional, it's all day, it's 7 days a week. So the commission has been focusing on some of those near-term recommendations that came out of the implementation plan. We did some small area plans for Cottage Grove and St. Paul Park to kind of look at different land uses and things that the cities could control through their comprehensive plans to gain more ridership in the corridor. And the kind of building that ridership has been the main goal of the Red Rock Corridor Commission for the past couple of years. One of our other kind of main advocacy pieces that we've been working on is what we call Route 363, which would be a demonstration route of all-day bi-directional bus service between Union Depot and Cottage Grove. We are hoping for a 2-year demonstration. This has been on Washington County's legislative platform for the past few years. We've not had any success yet. It is also included in this year's legislative platform, and we'll cover that at the end of the meeting. And there also have been multiple attempts to secure some regional solicitation funds, which are federal transportation and transit funds. We did that twice, once in 2014 and once in 2016, also with no success yet, but something that we are always kind of considering. And so with that, I will take any questions if anyone has any overview questions.
Any questions? Thank you, Emily. You know your very complete presentation when you have no questions. So, Okay, so next item on the agenda is recognition of outgoing members. We do have two members. One was Councilmember Mills and Commissioner Masta Castillo. Steel?
That's Castillo.
Steel. It's, so the L's are silent?
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm working on this. I promised her, I'm going on a trip with her next week, so I promised her I'd have the last name down here, so. But, so we have two resolutions. Do we want to read those resolutions, or what do we do in that situation?
We can read them if you'd like. We could simply just also make a motion and adopt them and have the commission sign them.
Okay. It's, do we want to do each one at a time, or do we? Okay,
Two separate
so-
motions, yes.
Okay, so can I hear a motion for the resolution for Councilmember Mills?
I would move that.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Okay, and so we got that. And then the second motion is for, can I hear a motion for the resolution thanking Commissioner Masta Castillo?
I'll move for Commissioner Mattis Castillo.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We're good. I suppose I have to ask that, even though I know there's nobody going to be opposed. So, okay. So then we also have the next item on the agenda is the approval of the consent items, including the minutes from the October meeting. Has everybody had a chance to read those? And does anybody have any questions regarding those?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Mayor Dingle, and also we have a second by Councilmember Ingman. And do we have, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the minutes have passed. Okay, then we also, next item is the draft 2020 work plan and budget. We have Emily again to present that to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, commission members. So for most of you, this is the second time you've seen this information for our 2020 work plan and budget. A few things, it's almost identical to last year's. Some of you may remember in the last few years, we decided not to renew our communications consultant contract and transfer that work onto Washington County staff. So we've been doing that internally. It's been working out really well, managing the website, the social media. We've been able to kind of easily do that and take ownership of that. So we will continue to do that. We have set aside some funds for a communications contract should we get Route 363 funding. We know that that would be something the commission would really want to make sure the word is spread about, and that we really let the people in the corridor know that they have this new demonstration. So should that get funded, we do have some funds set aside as a little bit of a contingency. As most of you are aware, the only funding partners for the commission are Ramsey and Washington County. We've not been accepting dues for the past couple of years, and our entire 2020 budget will be covered by fund balance, which we are quite comfortable with. And now we are asking for approval today. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
So do we have any questions of Emily? Otherwise, I would ask for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from Mayor Dingle and Councilmember Ingerman, sorry. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed? Sorry about that. So, okay, so we have that. The next item is, good, so now we just have information so I don't butcher any more names for the balance of the meeting here. So we have Joe, of course I got to do it.
Yeah,
You're going to kill me here, aren't you, here? So, Joe Ayers?
Yeah.
Johnson.
Yep.
I should know that, I'm sorry.
no worries. Good evening, Chair and members of the board. My name is Joe Ayers Johnson. I'm a Washington County Transportation Planner, and I will be speaking to you today about county staff's engagement efforts about Metro Transit's Network Next initiative. So just to give you an idea of how this presentation will go, first we'll touch on what the Network Next initiative is, and then the rough timeline Metro Transit is following. Then we'll mention the engagement that Metro Transit did, and then get into the Washington County supplemental engagement efforts, and then we will reflect on what we heard during that engagement and what is next. So, Network Next is Metro Transit's vision for the bus network of 2040, and will include a framework for metro-wide bus service improvements during that time frame. This is meant to replace the existing Service Improvement Plan, or SIP, which is a prioritized vision for local and express bus service through 2030. And the latest update to the SIP was in 2017. So similar to the Service Improvement Plan, Network Next looks at improvements to local and express bus routes and arterial BRT, but does not include LRT or highway or dedicated BRT. Metro Transit is currently in the process of developing the improvements to the bus network, and a draft will be made ready for public comment around mid-2020. They will then identify the new arterial BRT corridors, and finally they will put everything together, develop a prioritization, and a draft Network Next plan to be made available to the public around early to mid 2021. So Washington County staff met with Metro Transit in November to learn more about the Network Next initiative and the engagement that Metro Transit had conducted to inform the planning process. They both conducted Metro Transit pop-ups, which are the green dots on the screen, as well as issued grants for communities to do their own engagement, which are the blue dots. And Washington County did apply for a grant but did not succeed, and it's worth noting that those that received Metro Transit pop-ups and grant money were largely communities that were already well served by transit. And within Washington County, Metro Transit conducted pop-up engagement at the Woodbury Theater Park and Ride, and then met with the staff from the cities of Stillwater, Woodbury, and Oakdale to inform them about Network Next initiative. As Network Next is to set the stage for the next generation of bus service improvements, and since there was only one opportunity for Washington County workers and residents to give input during the engagement process, Washington County staff decided that it was imperative to do what we could to ensure that the needs and interests of Washington County stakeholders were reflected in the upcoming document. So we received an extension from Metro Transit so that we could be able to conduct our own supplemental Network Next engagement. And we identified some locations that were dispersed across the county, but were either along important corridors or were important activity centers, or had a large number of transit users, or some combination of the three of those. And we ultimately selected 4 locations to host our own pop-ups. One at Forest Lake at the Hardwood Creek Library and Forest Lake Transit Center, one at the Washington County Government Center, one at Century College, and one at Cottage Grove Park and Ride. We also coordinated with some of the major employers in Washington County to see if we could do any employment engagement there. And while our conversations with them were ultimately informed our process, and some of them would go on to write us letters of support, we weren't able to schedule anything in person at those locations. At our pop-ups, staff set up tables to collect responses to Metro Transit's Network Next survey, as well as a supplemental survey that we designed to be more tailored to the unique perspective of those who live, work, and play in Washington County. We collected survey responses by a variety of means. On iPads, we created business cards with links on them to be handed out to folks who maybe didn't have the time to take the survey at the moment. And then we also had paper surveys, too, for those that preferred that option. We also just had open-ended conversations with folks and then transcribed those conversations on flip charts. And we took all that we heard and all that we saw in the surveys, and one of the overarching things that we heard, particularly among those who are currently commuting, is an appreciation for existing service. We heard a lot of great things from folks, particularly at Cottage Grove Park and Ride, and at Forest Lake Transit Center, who really enjoy their routes, who found it to be really convenient for them. We also found that there was a large appetite for access to transit within the county. 80% of those surveyed indicated that they would use transit more often if they had better access. Additionally, no more than 21% of respondents at any location mentioned a preference for driving as one of the reasons that they don't use transit more. They were able to choose as many options as they wanted for barriers to transit, and only 20% or so would indicate that they preferred to drive. So those findings suggest to us that there is not necessarily a significant bias against transit in favor of driving, and that there is in fact great interest and taking transit within Washington County. Another theme that came up frequently was lack of flexibility. There's a narrow service windows in mornings and evenings for most of our commuting routes, and people expressed a wish that there was a little bit more flexibility around those, especially as regards midday service. Most of the express routes do not feature midday service, and many people express that even if they are frequent transit riders, or one of the reasons that they're not frequent transit riders, was kind of an anxiety around, well, what if something happens during the middle of the day? What if a kid gets sick? What if I need to leave for some reason and I'm not able to get somewhere? So that was a major barrier that kept recurring in our conversations. Specific to the Red Rock corridor, while we were in Cottage Grove, we heard a couple of things. People would like to see better utilization of the Newport Transit Station. It's acknowledged by a lot of people that we talk to that it's a valuable asset in the region, but there isn't currently as much service through there as, say, to the Cottage Grove Park and Ride. And so that's one of the requests that people had, was that we worked on that. They'd like to see expanded service times and midday service, and better connection to other regional transit ways and to the airport. So with all that in mind, what's next? County staff has compiled the results from surveys and conversations that we had and drafted a letter to Metro Transit that includes a summary of the community engagement results that we found, as well as requests for improvements in to consider during the Network Next planning process. And this letter will be going to the county board for signature within the next couple weeks. Some of the requests that are specific to the Red Rock corridor include increased service through Newport Transit Station, increased frequency and midday service between Cottage Grove and downtown St. Paul and downtown Minneapolis. And we requested that they incorporate some of the improvements from the 2017 SIP, which include Route 363, all-day service between Cottage Grove and Park and Ride and downtown St. Paul, as well as Route 367, which is peak period express service between Hastings and downtown Minneapolis. We'll be sending that letter to Metro Transit shortly after signature from the county chair. So with that, I'm happy to stand for any questions anybody might have about engagement efforts around Network Next.
Do we have any questions? Yes.
Thank you. Joe, thanks for the report. I'd be curious, when we ask patrons what the anxiety or what the reasons why, do we give them a check sheet saying it's because of anxiety or I can't get a ride, or do we let them fill in the blank?
So it's a list of check boxes, and they can choose all that apply to them. So maybe it's pickup and drop off times don't work for them. Maybe it's I prefer to drive. Maybe it's what are some of the other ones? It's well, there's another category. So if one, there's about 7 different options that allow them to select between those, and then there is an other if they decide that something else is on their mind. So a lot of it was pickup drop off times. That when we're saying that midday service is one of the things, it's pickup drop off times, and a lot of people were writing in midday service. And in our conversations with folks, that's kind of what would arise.
I guess just a follow-up comment, and maybe it's not there yet, but that's why I wonder if we got to get to the private-public partnership is if they do have to leave, maybe they get a voucher that it's going to be Lyft that brings them back to their car, and then how do we transfer the dollars, saying, I already bought the ticket today to ride the bus, but I had to go, and then how do we get those dollars back to them, or something like that? I'm just looking to be creative to say, can the private sector help on this anxiety part?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, so Metro Transit does offer what's called the Guaranteed Ride Home program. There is a threshold of number of rides per month that you do have to partake in, but suppose you work downtown Minneapolis, you've parked at the Cottage Grove Park and Ride, and you have a sick kid in Cottage Grove. If you take a cab or an Uber or Lyft, you can submit for reimbursement so that you do not have to pay to get back midday to your car to get to your kid. There is I believe, a maximum on the amount of times that you can do that, but it is something that they do offer. I've heard most people have success when they try to go through that program, but there is a threshold of a number of, I believe, rides per month or something along those lines that you do have to be eligible.
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember.
So out of curiosity, when was pop-up done?
Pop-up was done January 13th, Tuesday,
Okay,
January 13th.
Just recently then. Okay. Do you know what was your sample size? What was your
Our sample size, I
how many
actually
people
do
did
have
you actually
that.
get responses from?
particularly at Cottage Grove or overall?
I'm interested in Cottage Grove,
Sure.
but
Cottage Grove, I believe we had,
approximate number would be all right too.
we talked to around 75 people. I think in terms of surveys completed from Cottage Grove, it was around 25. Our overall sample size was around 115
Okay.
of surveys completed.
Have you,
No.
have you considered actually taking this to a location other than the park and ride to get people that potentially are not using the mass transit?
Sure. Chair, members of the board. We did select a library, Hardwood Creek Library, as well as Century College,
Oh,
as well as the Washington County Government Center to try to capture people in activity centers that either, particularly in the case of the library and Washington County Government Center, that need to get to services or want to get to services, but maybe aren't currently able to because they don't have transit. So there's kind of two samples going on. There's the regular commuters that we're reaching at the Cottage Grove Park and Ride and then the Forest Lake Transit Center, and then other folks who at the Washington County Government Center, Hardwood Creek Library, and then Century College maybe fit a different profile.
so did any of those folks actually, I've heard in the past, so the big reason, and a lot of times, well, one of the things is obviously flexibility of schedule, but also getting to your, that last mile, getting to your destination. Did very many people, or did most people that you talked to that were riding the bus, obviously it was working for them and it got them close to where they needed to be, I suppose, or.
Sure. So a lot of the people that we talked to who were commuters at these park and rides, a lot of them were what we call kind of choice riders, and that they already have means of transportation. They already have a car, but they just prefer to use the bus to get around. A lot of the folks that we talked to at Century College do not fit that description. A lot of them cited unreliable access to a vehicle as one of the reasons that they chose to ride, or that they would choose to ride. And a lot of the students that we talked to at Century did say, either it was too far of a distance to get to whatever bus that they would need to catch to get there, or just wasn't a feasible option for them. But of the people that do ride or wanted to ride, a lot of them said that was because they didn't have access to a vehicle.
And Mr. Chair, if I might add on, we did not hear once anybody say that they were satisfied with their transit access in Washington County. Even those who are avid users cannot complete their day-to-day lives and everywhere that they need to go using transit.
Any other questions? I have a couple follow-ups. One of them got answered in the discussion before of how you chose those different locations, so that was good. Emily, you brought up that people can be reimbursed if they have to find a different. How do people know that? I mean, how does somebody know? I did not know that, so.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, that is a good question. It is something that it's solely operated by Metro Transit, and it's only with the Metro Transit service. It is something that they promote internally. If you ride the express bus, sometimes we'll see one of the ads is the Guaranteed Ride Home program. I will say it's probably not their biggest marketing effort that I've seen, but we can send it out to the commission, a link to the website where that information is stored from Metro Transit. You probably would mostly hear about it by word of mouth. I'm not sure. And it's something that we could also promote on the Red Rock Corridor Facebook page if that's something that the commission would like to see, just so that our commuters do know that it's an option for them.
I definitely would like to see a link, because I'd like to get that out to as many pages as I can, that it is there, because it's one of the downfalls when I was riding the bus way back in 20-something years ago, going the express route out to, I know I shouldn't say that, but express route out to like Burnsville across the river and stuff like that, and that was always my biggest fear. And the big excuse there is like, okay, I get downtown, now what happens? And so the fact that they've identified that, and now even easier than ever with Uber, it would be nice to make sure we get that out there to remove as many obstacles that people might come up with why it doesn't work for them. So that is perfect. Thank you for for that answer. Let's see, so I didn't have any other, I think that was the biggest question I had. Let's see, that's all I had. Did anybody else have any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Awesome job as usual. Okay, next, now we have coming up here, actually, before Kurt, you come up, we have a name. I can finally get back on track with names again, Matt. Matt Wolf from Cottage Grove is going to talk to us about the Cottage Grove Circulator.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. I'm glad once my name came in handy for someone being so easy. Red Rock Corner Commissioners, thank you for having me, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here today to talk about the Cottage Grove bus loop that we enacted back in October. Just to give you a little bit of background, this process started in 2017 as part of our business retention and expansion program. As part of that program, we like to sit down with our businesses every year, and we interview them, and we like to interview them and talk to them a little bit about our business climate and how we can improve. And one of the key initiatives that came out of that 2017 program was we need to focus a little bit on our transportation in terms of businesses wanting a workforce and how we need to get them from St. Paul, Minneapolis, and the metro area into our business park. A little bit of an offshoot, we've seen a lot of continued growth. Renewal by Anderson is now adding 100 jobs. Up North Classic is adding 200 jobs. So that's not an issue that's going away for us in Cottage Grove in terms of businesses expanding and wanting to get workforce down there. However, when we did some research, unfortunately, one of the things we found is really for that, as we've already heard today, we need something reliable, and that's something that we have to wait for the Red Rock Corridor and Bus Rapid Transit, I think, to provide. However, as part of that research, we heard from our seniors, and one of the things the seniors were asking us was as they continue to see life cycle housing and seeing the opportunity to continue to live and grow within the community, they'd like to continue to shop in our community. So how do we provide access to our seniors to retail and other services? So we looked into it, and we found an organization called DARTS, which is out of Dakota County. Some of you might be aware of it. I know there's a service very similar operating in Hastings. And they are a professional service that provides transportation for senior citizens. So when looking at the loop and what we were trying to provide for our community, we wanted to see opportunities to connect our seniors with medical offices, pharmacies, retail, restaurants, things like that. And we saw 4 objectives for our circular. First was to provide reliable transportation to our seniors. They're our primary demographic. But secondarily, we also wanted to provide some access to those businesses for people with disabilities and low income as well. Additionally, we wanted to see increased foot traffic to our businesses, encourage community interactions, and also decrease caregiver burden through the transportation service. So working with DARTS, one of the first things they asked us to do was put together an advisory committee. And so when we went out in the advisory committee, we wanted to find regional experts in both transportation and also local experts in terms of dealing with our senior population and knowing what they need out of a transportation service. So what we did is we put together a list, a group of people who were very interested and helped us form this loop. First, Sheila Halbrook-White, who is the Washington County Mobility Coordinator, Ben Van Vuren, who operates the North Square campus in town, Bailey Christensen, the Legends of Cottage Grove, Melissa Tapperin, who is the CDA Executive Director, recently just joined. They operate the Woodland Park Apartments that has seniors, low income, mix of people there. Jane Goyers out of the school district, Sally Anderson, who actually operates the Stillwater. She helped us a lot in setting it up. And then Chris Hetland, who is our management assistant for the city of Cottage Grove. Once we put that advisory committee together, we wanted to make sure this was something the community actually wanted. Although we heard about it offhand from conversations, we wanted to get more focus. So we put together our survey with our advisory committee. We put that out to North Square, Legends of Cottage Grove, and Woodland Park Apartments, and we got 99 responses. 76% of those responses indicated they were interested in using the service. While additionally, we asked them where they would like the bus to stop. 79% said shopping destinations, 62% medical offices, and then 49% restaurants and coffee shops. When we asked them where do they most often do their shopping, 60% Hy-Vee, 59% Walmart, and 56% Cub Foods. So finally, then we asked them what they would be willing to pay. Averaged about $3.79, and then it had a range between 2 and 10 is where we got our answers between. So using our advisory committee's knowledge and using that survey and the data we had there, we put together a route, the stop, and the schedule. This service started back on October 15th. The route runs every Tuesday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. It does 5 one-hour loops. The cost for an all-day pass is $3. Anybody under the age of 18 ride for free. There are 10 dedicated stops on the route. Additionally, any rider that rides the route, if it's within 0.5 miles, they can ask for an on-demand stop or pickup. So that was something that was very critical to us. This route covers all of our commercial corridors, so that's East and West Point Douglas, 80th Street and Jamaica Avenue corridors. So anybody that lives within a half mile of that route can call in, they get pickup, and that covers most of our multifamily as well. So that was something important and something that a service that really makes DARTS unique and special in the fact that if you want to get picked up at your home, you can get dropped off Hy-Vee, and they'll come back to Hy-Vee, pick you up an hour later, and then drop you back off at your home as a part of that service. So before you is the route, and just to go over quickly, the first 3 stops cover our residential or our multifamily for seniors. We have Norris Square, Legends of Cottage Grove, Woodland Park Apartments. Then we go into our business corridor and our businesses to Hy-Vee, then to the Senior Center and Applebee's. We have Aldi initially, although we're going to touch about that recently. We just decided to make that an on-demand stop. Cub Foods, Target and Dollar Tree, then to Walmart, and then on our way back, we touched Alina Healthcare Clinic. And then on the lower left there, you can see the loop schedule. It starts at 10 o'clock, and then the schedule kind of breaks down when it hits each stop. Generally, the transportation is within 2 to 3 minutes of that time, so obviously that's very important in terms of any transportation route is making sure that you're there in a time for your riders. So just to give you a little bit of a rider snapshot, so we started this back on October 15th. This goes through January 14th of 2020, so we've been operating now for 13 weeks. We average about 13 rides per week, 6 riders per day. Working with DARTS, for a service that's just started, this is about where they usually typically see. To give you an idea of the range, West St. Paul is their most successful circulator. They average about 15 to 20 riders a day. And generally, their average on other routes, they're seeing about 10 to 15. So that's something we're shooting for as well as the year progresses and the year goes through. We'd like to see that jump up to 10 to 15 as well, so we're going to be working on that. But to give you an idea of the stop frequency, our highest stop right now is, in terms of residential, is Norris Square. Although if you add the 2 Woodland Park Apartments, they are actually higher. And we've added a second stop there because it was so in demand. So there's a second stop there at Woodland Park Apartments. In terms of our non-residential, our businesses, Hy-Vee is seeing the highest amount in terms of our businesses. And just to note, as you look down, Aldi was 0, so we actually removed them as a dedicated stop. There were some safety concerns in terms of moving the bus to the parking lot, so they were removed there. However, we did add that Woodland Park Apartments. Additionally, you'll see Alina Health has 0 stops right now. Generally, what we've seen and what DART's working with them, it usually takes a little bit longer for medical stops. Obviously, some of those medical appointments are booked, 6 months in advance. So working with staff and getting an idea in terms of Alina Clinic and getting them lined up and kind of, Commissioner John.
Excuse me, Matt. Do we have this slide that we can hand out?
Commissioner, we do not have it printed. We can email it to the commission after the meeting.
Okay.
Matt made some very timely updates to his PowerPoint, so you have the older version, and this is the very fresh new version with ridership numbers, so we will email that out after the meeting.
I appreciate that because I can tell you my eyes have no shot up there. So thank you.
And I will be honest with you, Commissioner Johnson, I cannot read the screen in front of me, so it's right in front of me as well, and I cannot read it. But I will make sure to get that to Emily. That was something actually we just got at the beginning of this week, so I did add it and put it in there. So I will get that to Emily so she can get it out to all of you as well. But just to get you an idea of why Alina Health has 0, but we really want to maintain them as a dedicated stop to give the opportunity for patients to start seeing the service as an option. As I was saying, that some of those appointments are scheduled 6 months in advance, so they're just beginning to see, that as a potential, and working with staff at Alina too to let them know that this service has started, something we're going to be doing in the next year as well. So an idea of cost and sponsors, DARTS charges an annual fee of $25,000 to run a once-a-week loop for the year. This fee is paid, it varies from community to community. It's usually generally a partnership between public and private sources. Currently, both Alina and Anderson Corporation Community Foundation have agreed to be sponsors. Additionally, staff, we're still in discussions. It's probably going to be something that occurs throughout the life of this service, is constantly going and having discussions with their sponsors and seeking new sponsors. One of the things we wanted to do is start to gather that data so we can use that as a resource to reach out to businesses to say, hey, look at how many people are using our service, this service to access your business, and give them the opportunity to become sponsors as well. So that's something that's going to be ongoing through the life of the Circulator. And then finally, just to give you an estimate of other communities and what they're seeing, current estimates for Cottage Grove are between 10 to 15,000 to finance the Circulator. It is part of the 2020 budget for Cottage Grove, and it comes out of our Economic Development Trust Fund. Edina has two days, and they run 2 routes both of those days. They all pay the full 100% out of pocket. Lakeville does 25,000, which is 100% as well. West St. Paul 15, Hastings 10, Stillwater 5, Oak Park Heights 2,500, and South St. Paul then does not contribute currently. So with that, I'll turn it over to the commission if they have any questions.
Do we have any questions of Matt? Oh, yes.
It's more of a comment because I'll be asking, sorry, Ed, in my community, it's a great program, but we as council members have questioned 10 to 15 riders a week, which is one day. What value is that? That's why we kind of paid the 10,000 and say the community's got to step up here. And the question I'm going to ask is, are we better off parking the vehicle and doing on demand? We may think that ridership can go up to 20, 25 people, and will it be cheaper? So we'll be asking, I will be, Darts, could you do the math for us? Are we better off just having that thing parked at City Hall and then call in that, hey, I'd like a ride from this time to this time, versus just circulating and waiting for somebody to jump on it? I don't know if Cottage Grove's looked at that option yet, but I know you're fairly new to it, but we've seen the numbers, and that's where our numbers stayed. They didn't ever grow. It's just been 2 or 3 years of the 10 to 12 riders per week, which is one day.
And that's something we can talk to Darts about. I know their current model is obviously having a driver and circulating it for the 1 hour. And
Right.
like you said, we are pretty new to the service. We can have discussions with them and see what they're at. And if that's something Hastings is doing as well, maybe they'll start hearing that more and more.
Well, I'll share. We'll see what they say.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not feasible for them to do that, but it just seems for gas and wear and tear, it'd be feasible to say, wait for the call, especially because I like that you guys do go that extra 0.5 of a mile to get to somebody's house. That's important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question, because I think it's always important to ask prior experiences, and what is happening at other places, so we can do the best we can in making it work at every new place. So, thank you. Any other questions? I have a question. I didn't know if I saw it or if you brought it up or if it was in that one slide. What is the current, because you've been going since October, so what are you finding the current ridership is in Cottage Grove right now?
So currently, right now, we are averaging 6 riders per day. That's unique riders. The range has been all the way as high as 9 and as low as 5. And that equals about 13 rides per week. So what that means is that a ride is anytime they get on the bus. So if somebody gets on at Legends of Cottage Grove, drops off at Hy-Vee, there for an hour shopping, then gets back on at Hy-Vee and then goes back to Legends of Cottage Grove, that counts as 2 rides, but 1 unique rider.
So what was the projection for at this time?
So we didn't have a projection. What we've done is usually we've used Darts and their historic numbers of what they've done in other communities, and this is about where they see in other communities when they start, in terms of usually it starts between 5 to 10, and then as you wrap up 1, 2 years, you start to see 10 to 15. West St. Paul, like I said, is their higher average user, and they see more than the 15 to 20 riders per day in the 5-hour loop.
And how long they've been doing it?
That is a good question. I know it's been at least 3 years, because that's where they started. It might be a little bit longer than that, actually.
Okay. So with that, and why is Edina 100,000?
Edina's 100,000 because they actually offer 2 days, and those 2 days they have 2 circulators going that interconnect within their city. One of them just recently started and is, I'm not very familiar with Edina, but a Southdale loop. So they just started that loop, so they actually pay the full 100,000 to operate both of those loops twice a week.
And right now, Cottage Grove is doing, you said 10,000? Or-
10 to 15, it's depending on what kind of sponsorship levels we get. We have 2 sponsors right now. We are looking for an additional one, so that is going to vary at the cost of what the city and community has to pay.
But the true cost with the sponsorship is how much?
25,000
25,000 per month, or per year?
for the year.
For the year, okay. So for 25,000, if you had, say, 10 riders, 10 rides per week, that's, if I do, just doing my math, yeah, I can kind of see, some of the questions regarding that, or vouchers for Uber or whatever, stuff like that, because it's become very, it looks like we have a question over here.
Well, comment, I mean,
Or comment.
and we haven't actually even had a workshop or a review yet of, but you guys, this is the first time I'm seeing those numbers myself, so, we'll obviously have that, and then we'll kind of determine and whether it is justified and the costs and so forth, and see what other actions we need to take, and getting some information from Hastings would be great.
Commissioner Member Vaughn?
I think it's good that we communicate the concept and work with DART, because I think we looked at some other options to say there was a private sector in Hastings that did that, but they didn't have the handicap accessible bus. That's why DART's is good at what they offer for this option. So that's why and there's a fee. I think Hastings it's $5, where Cottage Grove is $3. So that's good that everybody's kind of seeing what people are willing to pay. But we were doing the math on our paper saying, whoa, is that the best use of our tax dollars? Should we be doing this, or should we find a creative way to keep moving us along? So,
One of the, sorry, Commissioner. One of the interesting things will be to hear too from DARTS is if, they've charged a flat 25,000 if they're willing to negotiate that based on, if you just have it parked, if that's something they'd be willing to do or not. And I think it's a good discussion to have with DARTS to see if, once you do the math, if there's opportunities to make it more economically viable in the long term.
Any other questions?
Would darts be, or you guys, would you be available or think about possibly expanding your service to St. Paul Park, Newport?
We have got requests for that. The one thing DARTS is very cognizant of, they want to keep the loop to an hour. There are opportunities, if successful, that you could grow it and have a separate loop, much like we just talked about Edina doing. Actually, the South St. Paul and West St. Paul loops also interconnect so that they can bring members back and forth.
Well, the reason I'm asking is there's a 200-unit apartment being built across the river, or the highway here.
Right. There's
Just-
definitely possibilities and options for that in the future in terms of having connecting routes, and that's something they've done in the past as well.
Because it's not too far between here and Cottage Grove.
Thank you for the question. Thank you, Matt. No, I think as we look back we're here because we are looking forward towards transportation options. So I think it is too early to really start digging into the numbers and saying it's not working and it's not the good direction. I think that the purpose we're here is to find transportation options for us. I know when we were talking about for the DART is how do we develop, and I know at the county too, we're looking at different circulator options for different cities, because I think as cities become more transportation-based and moving in more people for apartments and, and certain demographics in here, you got to come up with those solutions. That's one of the, so I think, before we spend finding reasons why it doesn't work, we just have to continue to find, ideas and solutions why it will work. And so, and I think as we bring in, hopefully, thinking optimistically, Red Rock, we get the extra bus rides and we get the different things, and even if we get into the Great River Rail and we get the different trains and stuff, we have to have this stuff in place, because what I've found is with this transportation, it's then what, then what, then what. So each thing that you start identifies a new weakness that we have to be ready for. So if we can get started with this and get this in mind, and then we can use that even as a idea and support that we have the infrastructure in place. So if the minute you get this going for us, we're ready to take care of it. Nobody's going to be left out. So I think, as we look at the numbers, and I'm guilty of it with my, background too, is looking at the numbers, but I think we step back and say, we are here because we're supposed to be looking forward, and we're supposed to be thinking of in the future. And we need to spend, if this number doesn't make sense, who do we need to talk to make it closer to making sense? So I guess that's the message I'd like to get out, so.
Chair Johnson, if I may.
Yes.
Public transit is never going to pay for itself. It's a service that we offer our constituents and the public, and it's a needed service. So, but having said that, I do think it's important to look at the numbers and figure out what works best. But still find a way to provide that service for folks, because it is very much a need. And I think it might have been Dave that talked about that last mile. And we talk about that a lot too. For those of you that don't know my day job, I don't work in transportation, but I do work at the Met Council. And talking about that last mile and some of this ridership and bus service, and then what? You get to that park and ride, and then how do you go from there? And I think there's one Circulator that goes, an express bus that then goes up through town in Cottage Grove, but just one. So both in the morning and in the evening. So not a lot of variety there. So that's always going to be the question, but I think the service is very needed and very important, and I think that we need to continue to look at this and work with the numbers and figure out what is the best answer. And I think that this first step with Cottage Grove taking us on is great. St. Paul Park, obviously, and as Newport someday down the road maybe could jump on, or maybe the two of us could combine with something that then connected to Cottage Grove. There could be some options out there, but it's definitely worth looking at. And I do appreciate your comments about looking at the numbers, because how do we make it work make the best use of our taxpayers' dollars? But it is a service that we provide. I mean, some people might say I pay my taxes for city services such as police and fire, and yet I've never had a police call to my house or a fire truck at my house, thank heavens. But we pay for it because it's a service that needs to be paid for. So, it's something to think about, but something that I for one, want to advocate for, so.
Great comments, thank you. So, yeah, it's just, the thing that we understand, it's one of those things that, is there for, and, but also mindful that the residents and the people know that we are still watching. We don't just, very few things ever succeed in the first year. It hasn't even been a year yet. So it's the learning period, but I want people to be mindful that we are also watching the numbers for them, and so that's our duty too. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Okay, so we go on to the next item, which is the communications and legislative update. And we have, and I lost that sheet on me. Sorry. We have Kurt Howard that is here to give us that update.
Thank you, Chair and members of the Commission. It's a pleasure to be before you today. My name is Kurt Howard, and I am a planner with Public Works at Washington County. And I'm here to give you a communications update and legislative update. Regarding communications, most communications for Red Rock take place on the Facebook page, and it's a goal of staff in the coming year to post to that page once every week or every other week with transit-related news from around the region. Currently, the page has 366 likes and 382 follows, and there have been no comments that we've needed to take down, as everything's been in accordance with the Commission's Facebook use policy. Finally, for the communications update, there has been no press since the last meeting regarding the Red Rock corridor. It hasn't come up in the news. So that concludes my brief communications update. Moving on to the legislative update, Route 363 was included in Washington County's 2020 legislative priorities. The Washington County Regional Railroad Authority supports funds for a 2-year demonstration of a new bus route, the Route 363, and it would provide all-day bidirectional bus service between St. Paul and Cottage Grove, and a detailed explanation and fact sheet of that are included in your packet. And so that concludes my brief legislative update, and with that, I would be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Mr. Chair? Are there other types of social media that you're using besides Facebook, for instance, Twitter or
Instagram.
Instagram, yeah, but.
Mr. Chair, Mayor Dingle, I will answer that question. So far, there is not. We had hesitated to do that since it was, Red Rock's current social media presence was slow to take. Should we get some funding for 363, or should we choose to do any other planning studies, we will use that time to kind of bolster our social media following. I think at this time, since there's not too much active work going on with Red Rock, it might not be very successful so far.
Sure. Well, I just say that because as one of the old folks in the room, I understand that Facebook is not a young person's thing anymore, that it's Twitter and that sort of thing. And so we want to be sure to, as a way to get the word out, like you say, should funding come along and that get going, that would be certainly a benefit to this whole program.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Any other? Oh, yes.
So I was looking through some of this information, and in terms of the routes 363, and am I to understand that how many buses? 4 buses running? Last year, what was not approved was 7.3 million approximately, and now it's a 2-year demonstration route. Estimated cost 5.6 million.
Chair, Councilmember Thiede, so the change in price is because we went from a 3-year demonstration down to a 2-year demonstration.
Okay.
So that would be the change in the total cost estimate that you see there. I am not quite remembering. I do believe there's at least 4 buses that we would have to purchase in order to operate this demonstration route. Yes,
So
and
out
that's
of
included in the cost.
That actually seems kind of high to me, but is there somewhere that details the costs that make up that 55.6?
Not in the legislative packet. They tend not to like those details, but I can absolutely send them to you via email.
Thank you.
It's absolutely true. We got to keep those packets as quick, to the point as possible on that. But a couple of things, or actually the biggest thing is, I would say you're posting 1 per week, 1 or 2 weeks that's a waste of time if you're only going to do it that often. You have to do it at least 3 to 5 times. And I guess I'd challenge, the department to come up with something that isn't necessarily having to do with this, but at least something that would get people more engaged. So when you do have a message to get out, that's just not enough for anything really to get it out, The other thing too is we had that conversation, Mary Dingle was there and you were there too, as far as the conversation we had on the Great River Rail, is where do you reach anybody that's under 35 nowadays? And that is through other methods, whether it's Twitter or Instagram. And, if not now, when? And I think we discussed, even with an Instagram, you can link it if it makes it a little easier to Facebook to Instagram, so at least the message can get out there. And if you're going to do Instagram, I think you have to do something that's cute or whatever. But I think if we're going to do it, we should put some more effort into it. I think otherwise it's just not enough. And we need to also look at who is going to be the ridership going forward. And we just need to make more of an effort to it, or don't do it, I guess, is the way I look at it. So, and I don't think I'm alone. If you talk to anybody out there that does any kind of a social marketing and stuff, you have to reach out. And it doesn't need to have to be pertinent. It could be funny. It could be about anything about transportation. Just get people to follow you. So when you do have to get that important message out, it's there. So thank you for the presentation. Let's see here. And so now we are down to commissioner reports. Do we have anybody that would like to speak of anything? Mr. Thiede.
So, thank you for welcoming me to the commission. Just to let you know that I have actually been sitting on the East Metro Strong for the last couple of years. And Network Next is one of the things coming up Monday in that packet. Also talking about other things, and there's been a lot of discussion about like the Gold Line and everything like that, but not a whole lot about the Red Rock yet. But so anybody that would ever want to have me take something to that meeting from this group, I'd be more than willing to do that, and I'll try to bring things back to you guys and try to give you a little report. And Chairman, I see that you're also on the Great River Rail. I missed this last meeting because I actually didn't know about it yet, but in January. But so I'm also sitting on that this year, and
Great.
we'll see if we can kind of work together to kind of bring a lot of this stuff kind of together and kind of connect the dots. Also, to let you know, I primarily because of a distinct interest in personal rapid transit and so forth, I've also been very involved in the connected and automated vehicles. I sat through actually 4 different sessions of MnDOT's looking into the next 20 years out to 2040 and looking at different scenarios how connected and automated vehicles would kind of evolve. I've also had a lot of discussions with different local companies and like VSI and 3M is involved big in the whole connected and automated vehicles and a variety of other companies and such. So the companies that make the little buses like Easy Mile, we had one of their Easy 10s a couple years ago that Minnesota MnDOT practiced with and so forth, and companies like Local Motors that make ollies, and there's a lot of other companies that are doing that nowadays too. So I've kind of gotten, as I bring that up in the East Metro Strong here lately, I kind of got glassy-eyed looks back at me when I talk about connected and automated vehicles, but down the road that could become a very important step in terms of internal like to the cities and small areas of bringing people to the bus rapid transit or other transportation opportunities. So so that's a little bit of the futurist in me, and so anytime you want to talk a little bit more about that, or if I get wind of other things, I can definitely bring that before the group without trying not to bore you with things, but so.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other reports? I'd just like to add, I think it's a question I have is, I remembered a question from a previous presentation, is one of the things that we have heard that has been an issue with Metro Transit when we've asked for the extra bus at Newport is labor and drivers. So if we ever get this funding, are we going to be successful in finding the necessary drivers at that point?
Mr. Chair, that's a great question. From previous regional solicitations that have been funded where we are expanding transit service, that's not come up. So it hasn't been that much of an issue. So that, I guess, would be my only answer. So I haven't heard it, particularly with expanding or introducing new service, it being an issue. I think we particularly hear the issue about the bus drivers when it comes to state fair service, because they add a significant amount of capacity as well as just keeping the regular routes going. So I think that's where we're more likely to run into the driver issue.
Okay.
But we
Mr.
can
Chair,
look into it.
If I may, the Metropolitan Council just did a job fair for bus drivers a couple weekends ago, and they actually extended 250 job offers. So they are doing a huge push right now to build the number of drivers that they have. So of those, there was testing done. Now they're in the background check stages and whatnot, and then there will be training. So you're not going to see 250 new bus drivers on the road tomorrow. But it's a push that they're doing to put more drivers out there and get more drivers out there. There has been a shortage. There has even been a shortage beyond the state fair as far as cutting routes and different things. So it's been a serious thing. It's something that they've definitely been working on. It is I'll just put a pitch out there to anybody looking for a job. It's actually a great company, work for a great job and really, really good pay too, and really good benefits. So they've really promoted that recently, and they've done a really good push, and so they are hiring more drivers. So I think it was so successful having this job fair. So I think that going forward, they've found a way to kind of answer that call, and I think they've had some real success with it, so we'll see. So I'm not too concerned about that at this point now, seeing how successful that fair was. It was just phenomenal, so.
That's great news.
Yeah.
So thank you, thank you. So unless there had anybody else or any comments anybody else had out there or questions, that's all I had. Let's see, so the next meeting is,
In April for sure, and the exact date escapes me, but it is on your calendars, and we will be sending out a reminder.
okay, okay. So with that, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Okay.
A
Do
second.
we have a second? Okay. So we have a motion to adjourn and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, finally got to